Golden Group Roofing is a community brand. From our master lead roofers and industry partners to our clients, every single person represents the Golden Group standard. We strive every day to make your home's needs a priority because Golden Group invests in you and your communities. With unbeatable craftsmanship, customer satisfaction, reasonable pricing, Golden Group Roofing stands above the rest. Having been awarded GAF Master Lead Contractor, Certainty Select Shingle Master, and GAF Energy Certified Solar, Golden Group Roofing is 100% worthy of your investment. Experience the Golden Group difference, where hands protect what matters most. Visit us at goldengrouproofing.com or call us at 508-873-1884. 508-873-1884.
All right, folks, good morning and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget our affiliate stations like WACE, AM 730 in the western part of the Commonwealth. Of course, we're live streaming on the TuneIn app. All you have to do, well, first of all, if you don't have the app, just download it. Seconds to do that. Punch in WCRN, and you can take us anywhere on any of your devices. That's great, modern technology. You can join the conversation, 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000. That's for two-way talk and conversation. Reach right into the studio as I broadcast from our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios here in Westboro, high atop the Carberry Towers. You can also text us on our text line. That's right, we have a text line. Text it like you would anybody else. Real simple. 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. If you don't have a device that can text, if you want to just email at textjoeintheradio@gmail.com. All one word, textjoeintheradio@gmail.com. It appears on the same screen in real time, and we can respond to it. And, well, I'll get into that in a minute. Hey, the regular email, if you want to reach out to the show, is joemshow@gmail.com. We keep things real simple here, right? We had an incredible 6-month process to come up with the name, worldwide search of talent to contribute to it, and we landed on the Joe Mangiacotti Show. I know. Very creative. So email us at joemshow@gmail.com or call us in our office number at 508-603-9778. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning.
You look chipper today, and you very much look like a golf day.
Oh, it's a golf day.
Okay.
It's a golf day for sure.
The golf shirt, well, that gives it away.
Yeah.
And a hat and everything, and plus there's a smile on your face. So I'm thinking that's because you're thinking of...
Yeah, that might be linked. That might be linked.
All right, fantastic. So before I get into some of the things I want to talk about, and it's open lines all hour, I'll do my little monologue in a minute, it was interesting. All of a sudden yesterday, Cam... we had a lot of attention paid to the show's theme song. Have you given it much thought?
No,
No,
I just press play.
Right. You just play. Well, the thing is, it was interesting because I got a few texts saying, hey, change your song. And some people said, hey, it's actually bad or time for a new one. And I was like, okay, we used Eve of Destruction forever, right? Forever. Used it from day one. Mike Wade picked that out. I used it even after he retired from radio, retired from the show. I continued to use it. It was just when we did the name change, I decided to have one composed. And part of the reason for doing that, folks, is in radio, there's a lot of rules and regulations and tricks about being able to use music. So either you have to have expressed permission to use the music, or you can use a certain number of seconds of the music without having to pay or get permission. So there's a lot of that that goes with it. And then it also changes because we stream. So if your show has music that is copywritten and you don't have the royalty, the rights to it, then you have to pay a whole nother organization to stream it. You see what I'm saying? So it gets very complicated. So I said, hey, the easiest thing to do, Cam, have somebody compose it, write, perform it, and all set. Doesn't matter whether we're terrestrial radio or streaming or whatever. So there's ways around it. So I guess my question is, and Shane yesterday said, hey, why don't you do a poll? I do a poll on Facebook. So tomorrow, either later today or tomorrow, I'll let it sit all week. I'll go to Facebook. So our Facebook page is Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. So I'll put the poll up there. I'll share it on my Facebook page as well. I know a lot of you follow me just on my personal page, so do that as well. And I'll put it out there, and we'll ask. And I think, Cam, can you put? I could put like SoundCloud links on there so that we could give examples.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
absolutely.
We could do that. All right. So we'll do that, and we'll see what the deal is. All right. So you're golfing. I don't know what I'm doing. I am going to find a reason to go out. Where do you play, Cam?
Today I'm in West Boylston at Wachusett Country Club.
All right, and that's, despite the name, is that open to the public?
Yes.
All right, cool. And is that a nice course?
Yeah, very nice.
Okay, fantastic. All right, folks, so Cam's going to have a great day. Are you going to have a great day? 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. So today, by the way, is 100 days out from the election. I mean, we're also 60 days into the unrest, the civil unrest, or peaceful protests, depending on whether you're talking to a local politician or who in the mainstream media. I think it's civil unrest and actually rioting, right, from what we're seeing here. But look, the election, all right, 100 days as of today, and this election may feel to many people, as it does to me, that it will be a watermark in our history, both as a country and as in the history of the world. This is such an important election, first and foremost, because who the candidates are and what each of their administrations will mean to us and the world. But let's put a pin in that for a moment. First, let's address some of the mechanics of the election. See, one of the issues we are dealing with is obviously COVID-19, of course. It came on quick and caught us by surprise, but it really shouldn't have. We have had many pandemics in the past, global public health emergencies. This one is often compared to the 1918 flu pandemic, but I'd like to look at the differences for a second, because in what we find in some of the key reasons of those differences is what we should be paying more attention to, or why we should be paying more attention. So looking at the differences, the first is the speed in which the virus spread. That is the most concerning. See, the world was a lot smaller back then because we are more densely populated than we were, obviously, in 1918. There were fewer than 2 billion people on the planet, and now there are 7.5 billion. And we are much more mobile. In 2018, we had no air travel, but today we are literally jetting all over the world, hundreds of thousands per day. Last year, nearly 1 billion people flew from the United States. 1 billion, right? The Bureau of Transportation Statistics and estimates that U.S. airlines carried more people last year than in any previous year. 925.5 million passengers. The highest number since 2003, when we started to keep that particular number. And the number of flights performed globally reached 38.9 million last year. In 1918, we were traveling by horse and carriage. Very few cars were on the road yet, and people traveled globally by steamship. But mostly people didn't travel. But we did have service personnel and others returning home from the war. And that is the one reason the 1918 flu pandemic lasted 2 years, with an estimated 50 to 100 million people dying. What is interesting is how quickly it was forgotten, and we're only talking about it today because of the scope of COVID-19. We had some other health scares more recently, the HIV/AIDS virus since the early 1980s, SARS in 2003, and the 2009 H1N1 pandemic influenza. Again, these caught the public by surprise, but scientists who study pandemics were not surprised. The point is, our government has the responsibility to prepare for pandemics. No, actually, let me check that. We have an obligation to invest in public health systems that protect our citizens from the threat and the reality of future pandemics. So now, because we were not prepared, the politicians left the cupboards bare of equipment and testing ability. So let's do some fact checks here. Because if you listened to the mainstream media reporting, you'd buy into that fake news, like Trump cut CDC funding. Well, that's false. As a matter of fact, the CDC funding has gone up every year Trump has been in office. Also, Trump did not get rid of the pandemic unit at the National Security Council. It just moved to another division with a change in the title. The Trump administration did not refuse test kits from the World Health Organization. The WHO doesn't even sell kits. We built our own kits, as did every other country. And the production did get slowed down, but that was fixed very quickly. Now, Trump has been accused of muzzling the scientists. He did not. Guys, you can see them every day, even if you don't want to, on the TV. Literally every day. But know who did silence and even disappeared scientists? China. The spin that Trump told governors they are on their own for ventilators just isn't the case. He made it clear that the feds would back them up if they were unable to obtain their own on their own. The federal government would step in and help them out. And we also ramped up production of ventilators by both private and public cooperation and the use of the Defense Production Act of 1950. We were never at a shortage of ventilators or hospital beds for that matter. As a matter of fact, thousands of beds went empty after makeshift hospitals were constructed by the Army Corps of Engineers in the revamping of medical ships in record time. And now we are exporting ventilators all over the world for those countries who need them. And the best example of fake news surrounding the virus is that Trump called it a hoax. He did not. The virus exists. It is real, and real people have gotten ill and have died from it. He called the way the left has weaponized it to use against him as a hoax. You remember the early days? They tried to put the label, the Trump virus, on it. And then when it was identified as the Wuhan virus, as many viruses and illnesses before were labeled for the area or region it originated from. But because Trump used the term and everything Orange Man says is bad and wrong, by default, it was racist to call it the Wuhan virus. Speaker Pelosi just attempted to label it the Trump virus again this week, after the president referred to the virus that originated in Wuhan, China, as the China virus, which, of course, it is. Also, you'd think that the majority of Americans do not approve of the administration's handling of the coronavirus. That is also just not true. An ABC News poll shows 55% approve of the president's handling of it, and a Harris poll shows 56% approval of Trump's handling of the virus. And then the false narrative that Google has no plans for working with the administration to create a virus testing site for all Americans. But Trump called them out on that one, and he shared the release Google put out themselves, begging the question, where and why did the mainstream media put that out there when it is so easy to check, and Google put a press release out on it? And just so that we're clear, and even the simplest among us understand this, a press release is for the press. That would also be known as the media, mainstream or otherwise. And to wrap up this look at the political aspect of the virus, Trump has put enthusiastic praise behind some medications and therapies, saying he has a good feeling about one thing or another, and that it is hopeful that we have a vaccine fast and that will flatten out the curve and it will burn out. But the media and the opposing forces accuse him of giving Americans false hope. I think one of the most important roles of the president is to give Americans hope and let us know that no matter what we face it as one country, one people, with the same goal for everyone. Guess what? Since those first days when the media jumped down his throat for mentioning that long-standing drug, hydrochloroquine, that we've used for decades, well, guess what? It seems to help. And the media made it out as if Dr. Kevorkian carried it in his medical bag. It has been shown to work miracles for thousands. Let me move back to the mechanics of the election. We've seen Pelosi and her coven try to slip legislation on voting into the stimulus package, one having absolutely nothing to do with the other. But knowing that ballot harvesting would never survive an honest debate on the House floor, never mind the Senate floor, she slipped it in, trying to backdoor it. And if you don't understand what ballot harvesting means, let me tell you. Ballot harvesting is when any individual, anyone, can pick up any voter's ballot for any reason and deliver it to the polling location completely unchecked. Seriously? You can't see the problem here right on its face? The president says that ballot harvesting will invite corruption. Invite? No, Mr. President. It does not invite. It serves it on a silver platter. It damn near encourages it. Republican Whip Steve Scalise said Speaker Pelosi wants to make ballot harvesting standard practice nationwide. Like so much in this new bill, would be a win for the far-left Democrats and a loss for democracy. Rather than using a global pandemic to push shady election policies, Democrats should focus on the health and well-being of our citizens and our electoral process. You know, we've had absentee voting for years, and it has its purpose, and it has worked well. Many, on the left don't particularly care for the tradition of absentee ballots because those are often used for our military men and women who are serving overseas or stationed away from their voting locations. And they tend to vote Republican. But you have to ask for those and fill them out and then mail them directly to the town clerk or municipal authority in charge of elections in that city or town. They are not mailed out en masse to be found spread around apartment and condo lobby floors or left in stacks on the post office docks, where anyone can pick it up and send it in. After filling it out, of course. By the way, the president and other presidents have used the absentee ballot to vote for themselves. The president did it in Florida, where he legally resides. Then Republican leader Kevin McCarthy had this to say: Democrats have said they see coronavirus as an opportunity to take more control away from the American people, and their desire to change election law through ballot harvesting is a dangerous example of that. It is, folks. They want to federalize voting. Voting should be absolutely as local as you can get. Voter fraud has been one of my champion causes for years. You know, I've talked about it a zillion times here on this show and other places, and we are subjected to it almost every election. Remember the weeks-long battle over hanging chads in the 2000 Florida election? Look at the 2018 congressional race in North Carolina that was overturned by the state election board, or the mayor of Gordon, Alabama, who was removed from office last year after his conviction for absentee ballot fraud, or John and Grace Fleming. Both were found guilty of duplicate voting, once by absentee ballot in New Hampshire, and then in person here in Massachusetts. Voter fraud exists. It is ever present. It is strong and organized. And we say we value our democracy and the power of the American elections, one person, one vote. So much blood and lives have been spilt and taken to defend it, keep it, and we honor all those who have paid the ultimate price for you to have it. That we don't require you to vote has always been a little beyond me, but then again, the whole point of a free society is that you have the freedom to be lazy and uninvolved. And just don't bitch about it when you get leaders that you did not vote for, that you don't want, because you didn't vote for them, so I don't want to hear it. The argument, the simple mindset that voter ID is racist or that it is voter suppression is laughable and so transparent. It is a red herring misdirect to keep the voting process hackable. There is no other reason to be against voter ID than to preserve the opportunity to steal a vote or two. None at all. Convince me otherwise. The Heritage Foundation made a list of some great points when it comes to the dangers of mail-in ballots. First, absentee and harvest ballots compromise the secret ballot process, which is, of course, a hallmark of U.S. elections for over 100 years. Absentee ballots are the tool of choice of vote thieves and those willing to compromise the election process. And according to the U.S. Election Assistance Commission surveys, millions of mailed ballots have been misdirected or gone missing in prior elections. Electronic signatures are too imprecise and easily duplicated and should not be accepted. This year's election means residents of some states may be forced to vote using mail-in ballots, and that makes them vulnerable to intimidation, fraud, and chaos. As all mail-in elections move behind closed doors, behind the oversight of election officials, along with prolonged counting and potentially lengthy delays in certifying questionable results. And of course, my favorite, the old, hey, we found a trunkload of uncounted ballots in some random poll worker's car. Look, it is important that we take responsible steps to make it hard to cheat in elections while making it easy for legitimate voters to vote. Politicians have seen the virus and the fear and confusion surrounding it to usurp power and ignore the civil and constitutional rights. But that, my friend, is another observation for another day. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Lines are open and available. It is 26 and a half minutes after the hour. Let me go to Mark, who's been waiting patiently through my little monologue. Mark, thank you very much. Good morning, sir, and you look marvelous.
And you look marvelous as well.
Thank you.
Have you received your official 2020 vote by mail application from William Francis Galvin? Have you received that in the mail?
I haven't, no.
I have.
Cam have.
I have.
Okay, Cam has it. But let me qualify this. I'm in a condo. A lot of times the mail comes in, it's put into a big pile, and then like once a week I go through it. So it could be sitting there.
Probably, I highly suspect that it's there in your mail. Go and check. Grab it. Hold on to it. This is the idea that I have. Don't even open it. It's sealed, okay? Don't even break the seals. Don't open it. Don't fill it out. Don't mail it in. What I want you to do is that come election day, take it in your hot little hands and bring it with you to the voting place, your regular voting place. And if somebody there tries to tell you, well, you're already marked off as having voted, say, not, here it is. I never opened it. I never mailed it. If she gives you any crap, you call a cop over. Here it is, officer. It's not open. It's not sealed. This lady can't tell me that I've already been processed and I've been checked off the list. Give me a paper ballot and give it to me now. Bring it right with you to the voting place.
Right.
Don't even open it.
Right.
Don't even unseal it. Bring it with you. Physically bring it with you.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And, the interesting thing, Mark, is I've always thought that when your vote is stolen, it should be treated as a criminal activity, that it should be investigated, tracked down.
If you have it in your hand, that's the evidence right there.
Right.
That's the evidence.
Right.
Never mind the crap. Just give me my paper ballot and I'll stick it in the machine myself.
Right.
Don't tell me that I've already voted when I have the evidence right in my hand. Officer, come over here, look at it. You understand what I'm talking about?
Yep, I absolutely do. I absolutely do, because you're saying that you're fearing that what's going to happen is they send these out in mass.
What happened in Broward County in the last election, remember that incident? They took place all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
If you have it in your hand when you go in November and it's not even open and the seals aren't even broken, they have to give you a paper ballot.
Right. Correct. Yeah, you know what? That's a great idea, and you know what? I'll echo that, and I'll say that. Look, if you take because whether I have it, I'm planning to physically go to my polling place. I'm not doing this.
Don't even open it. Bring it with you.
I will, and that's good advice. I'll echo that. I'll repeat that in other shows.
All right,
Mark, that's great advice.
Have a good one, man.
All right, Mark. Thank you very much. All right, folks. Hey, that's a great idea. I'll bring it up again, but we're going to take a break right now because we're against the clock, and it's time for Case Files from the LPDAM. So let's check in with Sean Burke, president of the LPDAM, and be back with the Joe Mangiacotti Show on the other side. 508-871-7000, folks. Good morning and welcome to Case Files from the LPDAM, where we take a look at actual cases, the law, and lessons from the findings, and where we share the experiences of the experts of the Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and joining us this week is Sean Burke, president of the LPDAM and resident manager of Courtside Legal Investigation. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Joe.
Thanks for joining us again for Case Files.
Thank you. I appreciate being a part of it, Joe.
I want to jump into this because I was reading an article the other day regarding an issue out in California, and it seems California has a lot of issues with both PIs and people impersonating police officers and things of that nature. It was of an unlicensed private investigator, which, of course, I wouldn't even call a private investigator if there's no license at all, but they were advertising on Craigslist and other social media outlets without a license, without being a legit operation. Are we experiencing similar issues like that here in Massachusetts?
Well, this is a great question, Joe. Sadly, we are aware of some impersonators claiming to be private investigators advertising on the internet in Massachusetts. When LPDM becomes aware of these impersonators, we forward the information to the Massachusetts State Police Certification Unit. They investigate the impersonator and will arrest anyone criminally violating the Massachusetts statute. At LPDM, we have a low tolerance for impersonators because they often victimize unknowing people in our community. Like California, you need a license to perform any third-party investigation in Massachusetts. You need a license to perform the duties of a private investigator. And you need a license to advertise for any work being performed. And Joe, you need a license to advertise for any work performed or being utilized in a Massachusetts court. So don't be fooled by these internet impersonators that often disappear with your money, with little to no services being received.
Well, Sean, it seems deplorable that someone would impersonate a private investigator or a law enforcement officer and much less take the money and screw.
You're right, Joe. Deplorable is the right word for it. Unfortunately, it seems the elderly are the most vulnerable group to be victimized. At lpdm.org, you can find legitimate licensed private investigators that were vetted by the Massachusetts State Police as well as LPDM. Our members take pride in providing quality services to our clients. On our website, we made it very easy to find an investigator by hitting the Investigator tab and search options that follow to narrow your search. Joe, with over 50% of all working Massachusetts licensed private investigators as LPDM members, LPDM.org has provided a safe, secure place to find a professional and reputable investigator. These businesses reinvest in their profession, so there is a high probability a client will get their results. Remember, Joe, you're in good hands with LPDM.
You absolutely are. And it makes perfect sense, actually, to go right to lpdam.org because they've already been vetted. You don't have to go to the state police or Secretary of State's office. It's a real shortcut, Sean.
It really is, Joe. And we've provided a safe avenue for people in our community to receive good services, quality services.
That's fantastic. Thanks for stopping by, Sean.
Thank you, Joe.
And thank you for joining us for Case Files from the LPDAM. Join us here each week on WCRN 830 AM and online anytime at lpdamcasefiles.com. Visit us at lpdam.org, and you can find LPDAM on Twitter and Facebook at PINMass and anytime at 800-955-6274. For Sean Burke, I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Have you heard of the hottest new bakery around? I know you heard about it right here. My friend Al has opened Nothing Bundt Cake in the White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. Nothing Bundt Cake is a bakery chain and is locally owned and operated by my friend Al. They have bundt cakes ranging from bite-sized to tiered, plus platters, candles, and cards. For any occasion, function, or just to have around the house or office, stop by and check them out. Everything is baked from scratch and on site. Nothing beats a sweet surprise. And until you try one of Al's bundt cakes, you haven't tried a real bundt cake. Stop by and ask for Al. Tell him Joe told you to stop by. 98 Boston Turnpike, White City Plaza near Planet Fitness, Shrewsbury, and on Facebook as well. Nothing Bundt Cake, Shrewsbury.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks. Welcome back to the second part of the first hour here, or the only hour, actually, on Sundays, that is. The first hour is a Cameo Media production called Faith in America with Reverend Peter Preble, so I hope that you're enjoying that. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Lines are open and available. Again, 508-871-7000. You can also text us on our text line. That's available at 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. And you can also email the show at textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. That's all one word, textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. All right, for the second half of the show, and I had mentioned this yesterday for a brief moment, but we didn't have time to get to it. We had Dr. Larry Fedor on. We had some great calls, so I didn't really get a chance. But I did mention that Heather McDonald, who I'm sure a lot of you recognize her. She's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, and she's a contributing editor at City Journal. She's out there, and you can find her articles. Well, she penned one that's interesting, 4 months of unprecedented government malfeasance. And I thought I would share this a little bit because she makes some great points and would want some of your reaction from it. See, over the last 4 months, Americans have lived through what is arguably the most consequential period of government malfeasance in U.S. history. Public officials' overreaction to the novel coronavirus put American cities into a coma. Those same officials, passively in the face of widespread rioting, threatened to deliver the coup de grace. Together, these back-to-back government failures will transform the American polity and cripple the urban life for decades. Before store windows started shattering in the name of racial justice, urban existence was already on life support thanks to the coronavirus lockdowns. Small businesses, the restaurants and shops that are the lifeblood of cities, were shuttered, many for good, leaving desolate rows of for rent signs on street after street in New York City and elsewhere. Americans huddled in their homes for months on end, believing that if they went outside, death awaited them. This panic was occasioned by epidemiological models predicting widely unlikely fatalities from the coronavirus. Back on March 30th, the infamous Imperial College of London, that model predicted 2.2 million deaths in the U.S. by September 1st. Absent government action, that prediction was absurd on its face, given the disappraisal of the U.S. population and the fact that China's coronavirus death toll at that point had already leveled off at a few thousand. The authors of that study soon revised it radically downwards, but too late. It had already become the basis for the exercise of unprecedented government power. California was the first state to lock down its economy and confine its citizens to their homes. Eventually, almost every other state would follow suit, under enormous media pressure to do so. Never before had public officials required millions of lawful businesses to shut their doors, throwing tens of millions of people out of work. They did so at the command of one particular group of experts, those in the medical and public health fields, who viewed their mandate as eliminating one particular health risk with every means put at their disposal. If the politicians who followed their advice weighed a regular a greater set of considerations, balancing the potential harm from the virus against the harm from the shutdowns, they showed no sign of it. Instead, governors and mayors started rolling out one emergency decree after another to terminate economic activity seemingly needless of the consequences. The lockdown mandates employed mind-numbing arbitrary distinctions, right? Wine stores and pot dispensaries were deemed essential and thus allowed to stay open. Medical offices were required to close. Large grocery stores got the green light. Small retail establishments with only a few customers each day were out of luck. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer notoriously used her red pen within megastores to bar the sale of seeds, gardening supplies, and paint. It was already clear when these crushing mandates started pouring forth that shutting down every corner of the country was reckless overreaction. By mid-March, 2 weeks before the Imperial College model was published, Italian health data showed that the coronavirus was terribly lethal to a very small subset of the population, the elderly and the infirm, and a minor health problem to nearly everyone else who is not already severely ill. The median age of coronavirus in Italy was 80, and they died with a median nearly 3 times that, such as heart disease and diabetes. The lead author of Imperial College Model has admitted that up to 2/3 of all coronavirus fatalities would have died from their other issues by the end of 2020 anyway. I think that's an important distinction to make, folks. 3 months later, this profile of coronavirus casualties still holds true. Public health intervention could have been targeted at the highly vulnerable population without forcing the American economy into a death spiral. But there was a lot of disinformation, folks, right? By now, it is impossible to attribute the media's failure to publicize the facts about the coronavirus to mere oversight. Every story that does not mention, preferably at the top, I need some water, the vast overrepresentation of nursing home deaths at the coronavirus death count, above 50% in many countries, and 80% in several of our own states. It's a story that is deliberately concealing the truth. Casual readers and viewers have been left with the false impression that everyone is equally at risk, and thus the draconian measures are justified. The media have been equally uninterested in the scientific evidence regarding outdoor transmission. Coronavirus infections require what Japan calls the 3 Cs: confined spaces, crowded places, and close contact. The fleeting encounters on sidewalks in public parks that characterize much of city life anyway simply do not result in transmission. And yet, if you briskly approach someone on one of Manhattan's broad and now empty sidewalks, the oncoming pedestrian may lunge into the street or press up against the closest wall in abject fear that you are not wearing a mask. You may be cursed at even. In some cases, worse, folks. The public health establishment has been equally complicit in creating this widespread ignorance. It has failed to stress at every opportunity. For the vast majority of the public, the coronavirus is at most inconvenience. The public health experts did not disclose that outdoors was the safest place to be and that people should get out of their homes and into fresh air. Not coincidentally, the experts' newfound power over nearly every aspect of American life was dependent on the maintenance of fear. Well, the U.S. death toll from the coronavirus has been demographically circumscribed and lower than the previous flu pandemics, right? 1968, 1956, and of course 1918, as we talked about earlier. When adjusted for population, the economic tolls has cut across every sector of the country and every population group. Whole industries have seen their capital wiped out overnight. And despite a better than expert employment report in early June, the long-term effects of the shutdowns and the continuing mandates of social distance will prevent a full economic recovery for years to come. 44 million Americans are still out of work. Supply chains have been thrown into chaos. Fresh fruits and vegetables are being plowed under, and livestock burned uneaten for lack of access to processing plants and markets. Small businessmen who have put their life savings into creating a service that customers want have seen their hard work go up in smoke without rent from the retail tenants. Commercial landlords can't pay their taxes. City budgets have been decimated. The additional $8 trillion in public debt taken on to try to substitute for the private economy will depress the opportunity for this country for generations. And that has been the response to this economic carnage on the part of our ruling class. Politicians have put cute names on what has been taking of private property on an unprecedented scale. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo calls the state lockdowns New York on pause, as if commerce can be indefinitely suspended and then magically resurrected with the flick of a switch. Well, the politicians' ignorance about the complexity of the economic life was stunning, as was their hypocrisy. To a person, every elected official, every public health expert, and every media pundit who lectured America about the need to stay in indefinite lockdown had a secure, essential job. Not one of them feared his employer would go bankrupt. Anyone who warned that the effects of the lockdown would be more devastating than anything the coronavirus could inflict on us was accused of being a heartless capitalist who only cared about profits. So this is from, again, Heather McDonald, an article, and she published it as the Imprimis, right, which is part of the Hillsdale College. What say you on that? What say you on that? We've been saying, and I've maintained, that we've had to weigh this a little bit more because in the media isn't really talking about this side of it, folks, that the domestic abuse, child abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse, they've all elevated. Suicide has all elevated at incredible records. It's spiked, and it's a very dangerous situation to be in. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let me go to the phones because Joe's been waiting patiently. Good morning, Joe. Thanks for calling, and thanks for listening.
I agree with many of the assertions because if you think of it logically, farmers shouldn't have to wear masks, migrant work, anyone working in tractor-trailer combos that are bringing the merchandise into the essential places such as grocery stores, firefighters, police officers, the direct care personnel, and any of the healthcare facilities, the individuals in intermediate care facilities caring for developmentally delayed, security guards like myself who work weekends. They're essential to patrolling corporate buildings. And we have gone to an extreme where the masks need to be mandated, and I need to wear it, I won't say where. And certainly there are certain individuals, governors, that have gone to an extreme in terms of restricting sales of certain items. But quite frankly, when I read the Worcester Telegram and I see the average age being in the 80s and the 70s of the corona, well, maybe I'm mistakenly asserting the average age. When you see that it's primarily the elderly, the people 61 or older like myself, that have compromised immune systems, survive cancer, that have to wear the mask and be cognizant of how deadly this virus is. If you approach someone with asymptomatic conditions, those are the individuals that are vulnerable. The ones that have compromised immune systems, that are insulin-dependent, diabetic like myself, those are the individuals that are terrified those are the individuals we need to protect, or the other individuals that have situations in nursing homes, like my brother who's Down syndrome is residing in a nursing home, and I cannot even contact him. I understandably maintain my distance when I visit him. Quite frankly, we are all terrified, and the economic catastrophe that has been caused by this virus is just shocking, and it's unbelievable in terms of its effect. Nothing is comparable except for maybe the polio epidemic of the 50s, but even that wasn't as adverse as this one, because it's almost like mass hysteria has descended upon everyone in terms of the fear that if you get the virus, your last gasping breath would be, I should have listened to the individuals that promoted wearing a mask when I'm in close proximity with others, when I'm using public transport, when I'm on the airlines, when I should have stayed. I should have maintained certain sensible protocols to maintain my life and extend my life, quite frankly.
But Joe, let me ask you this, and let's kind of figure this out. We know a lot more about the virus than we did when it first came on the scene, right? And we know that the most, as we're been repetitive at this point, but the most vulnerable are the elderly. Yes, the average death here in Massachusetts and consistent throughout the country is 80, give or take. And of course, anybody with underlying conditions, diabetes or compromised immune system. But we also know that it isn't it's not through the air, right? And we know that wearing a mask when you are not able to socially distance. I mean, you don't need to have a mask on if you're walking down the street and somebody's 20 feet away from you. But if you know that you're going to be within, let's use 6 feet as the benchmark here, and you're going to be in crowded, put the mask on. Do not, I'm fine, by the way, Joe, like no handshaking. I was okay doing away with handshaking before the coronavirus. I never understood it.
I do the elbow bump.
I do, yeah, the elbow, and I might go so far as the
odd
fist.
as it seems. As odd as it seems.
No, I'm fine because, Howie Mandel and Seinfeld and all those guys, right, we used to joke it, but I was like that. I'm a little bit of a germaphobe in that way. You see people, you have no idea what they've been touching before they come in contact with you. So I'm okay. If we never ever do handshaking again, that's fine with me. But... so you wear the mask, you don't have physical contact, you don't do the hugging. We get all that. And at this point, I think it should be up to us as individuals, because you're not forced to leave your house. If you do not want to go out, stay home. Have people over on your balcony, patio, 10 feet away. But the businesses, and I said this a long time ago, I think I did a note with Joe on this. Look, business people are entrepreneurs, right? They figure stuff out. That's what they do. Take the guidelines from the CDC and our medical people, all right, and let them figure it out. Because instantly I saw plexiglass go up, and I saw the ropes go up in the grocery stores, and they were wiping down. I'd go down a Price Chopper, and before I could put my iced tea on the belt, they wiped it down. They stopped doing that, but they were doing it. The point is, let us take on the responsibility of our personal health and safety a little bit, but lighten up the reins and let commerce come back.
How do we reopen the schools? How do we contend with situations where young children or those that have been developmentally delayed, that have taught, those that are autistic or Downs like my brother, or those who don't understand, they don't have an understanding of the ease of spread, or you're dealing with issues with the activities of daily living of the individuals, you're in close proximity to them. I've worked in group residences and intermediate care facilities, and you're right next to individuals when you're attending to their daily needs. Quite frankly, if they make blanket protocol in terms of how to contend with, or even transportation of individuals in the small vans into facilities where there's close proximity and small classrooms, how do we logistically address the individuals in terms of transportation of individuals, or of a large schools where there's already 30 kids in a classroom. How are we going to? I mean, I suppose the remote learning one day and then the classroom the next. But I mean, there are situations that are going to occur. Look at what happened in Quincy, where the summer classes occurred and were scheduled, and then there was an outbreak, and the emails had to be sent out to those individuals that had close proximity to the individuals that were carriers of the coronavirus. There are going to be outbreaks, and there's going to be fear in certain school districts when certain situations occur because people are asymptomatic. They don't have the symptoms. They don't know they're spreading the disease. They're not intentionally spreading it.
Right.
But what happens in those situations?
Well, Joe, first of all, I mean, the thing is that you go prior to this, you go to a hospital, and there are standard universal protection procedures, right? No matter what, and doctors, nurses, you go into anything, and you go up to UMass for a check-in. Even before coronavirus, they had protocols. Well, we simply need to understand that until there's a vaccination or some other major step in this, that has to be like remdesivir and the new vaccines that they're developing in Great Britain, where they're doing it in clinical situations, but you need a longitudinal situation to see if there are any adverse side effects, because you have the other people who are going to refuse the vaccinations as opposed to those that believe in science, that whether it be on religious grounds or potential side effects. I mean, I had my mumps, measles, and rubella inoculations when I was young, but I would have done anything when I was youthful, but I mean, certainly they're going to be people that are foolish and don't believe in science or a scientific protocol or scientific intervention. Which is why, Joe, that it behooves everybody to practice those individual protection things and treat every situation that you're going to go into as that the person next to you isn't asymptomatic, that you got to treat everybody as they are positive, say. And that's why you keep your distance, or you have your mask on when you come within distance, even gloves in certain situations. I don't know about you, but I mean, I've got a little packet of alcoholic wipes in my pocket. I've got it in my bag, and we just have to. Frankly,
at this stage, being 61, given my health, if I get it, I'm probably doomed to labored breathing and some ventilator, but. I mean, I don't run around without my mask. When I'm in a supermarket, I maintain the proper protocol. When I'm in a corporate setting, I maintain the proper protocol.
And Joe, you may not know it, but you may have saved your life at one point because you did that, and you looked out for yourself. You put on your mask, you kept your distancing, you didn't touch a lot of stuff you didn't need to touch, and there's a good chance you didn't get it because you did those things.
With the bleach, I don't soak it, but phones and flip phones and whatnot and tablets and we all follow those protocols, most of us security guards, but you need to maintain certain protocols. But there's such fear out there, such terror. It reminds me of like something out of a Hollywood production like Mask of a Red Death, that was written by Edgar Allan Poe, where in the days when there weren't vaccines, in the days when science wasn't prevalent, or when reason wasn't something that would cause people to use certain protocols, people were terrified in the days of the Black Death in the Middle Ages of death, sure death, if you were infected with with some godforsaken viral agent that you can't even visualize because it's submicroscopic.
Yep. You got it. We are absolutely dealing with an invisible enemy at this point, and that's why, folks, you are your own best advocate and your own best person to protect yourself. So you have the mask. You have a good day, sir. And thank you. Keep
up with your program. It's very informative, and I'm going to be late if I don't get out of the car. You take care, sir.
All right, Joe. I got it. As a matter of fact, on that note, we're moving up to the end of the hour here, about to hit 8 o'clock, and that means I'll be out of here for today and for the weekend. But I'll be back Thursday, and I think I have this correct. Jerry Doherty is taking a well-deserved little vacation with his beautiful wife, and asked me to sit in on Thursday. It's Political Thursday anyway, so we're going to keep the same thing going, just minus Jerry Doherty. Hopefully the Colonel will be here. Holly Robichaud will check in, and we'll continue the political discussion on Political Thursday and Making Money Last on this Thursday. And then, of course, I'll be back next weekend, which is... Actually, the first is next Saturday, so that means Senator Mike Moore will be in at 7 o'clock for Politically Speaking. Don't forget to check out TJM Show or Joe Mangie Show online for other posts, articles, and stuff that I share on our Facebook and social media, Joe Mangie. All right, Teddy Goodpup and I are out for today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
Tropical storm hits Texas. Hurricane heads for Hawaii. I'm Christopher Cruz. A powerful storm has made landfall on Padre Island in Texas and in the interior. Hannah has been downgraded to a tropical storm after making landfall as a hurricane. Meteorologists